Evening. Leonard, I don't think we have any
apologies, Chair.
Unless my eyes deceive me, so thank you very much. Item 2, any declarations of interest for the agenda tonight, please? No. Thank you. Chair's report, I don't have any Chair's reports. Any urgent items that we've received?
It'd just be at this point if you wanted to change the order of the agenda.
No, we'll keep it as is, actually. I think it's fine. Right, have we received any public questions?
None received, Chair.
Very good. Okay, so if we'll go through the minutes for the last couple of meetings, please. So the previous on pages 1 to 4 is the minutes for the this committee meeting held on the 7th of January. Are there any comments or questions from the committee, please? Okay, all of those in favour of confirming those minutes, please raise your hand. Very much. Thank you.
The 4th of March.
I think it was another item. It's the minutes for some other meetings referred to the previous meeting, which is the Supporting Vulnerable People Working Party. All those in favour of receiving those minutes, raise your hand. Thank you. Thank you for the minutes confirmation. So I'll move on to the officers' reports, item 7. So Daniel, the forward planner and resolution tracker, please.
Thank you, Chair. So this report presents the forward planner for the next municipal year, 26-27, and the resolution tracker for this financial year, 2025-26. I'm pleased to highlight that all the items in the resolution tracker from our previous meeting have now been successfully completed. Looking ahead, the main items scheduled for our next meeting in June will be the various year-end reports. These will form a significant part of the June agenda and will be reviewed by this committee before final approval at June Council. But I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay.
All those in favour of noting and approving those items, please. Next item is the bank reconciliation.
Thank you, Chair. So this report presents the bank reconciliation as at the 1st of January. All balances have been reviewed and verified against the council's accounting records with no discrepancies identified. Have to take any questions because there's not a lot to really add to this agenda item. Questions? Okay.
I just had a presentational question. So and so forgive me if I've misunderstood this. Point 3.2, there's the summary of the 3 accounts, 2 with Lloyds, 1 with HSBC. That all adds up. But then there's more detailed pages beyond that. And I do note there's an investment account, 1.2 million, which is all accounted for on the subsequent pages, on the appendices. There's the Lloyds 32-day call, and there's a petty cash. And so if we've discussed this before, we've explained it, I do apologise. Just presentationally, why would we not cover that in section 3 as a summary?
We view them as 2 different things. So the bank reconciliation is the cash available to us readily, whereas the 32-day account and the 1.2 million they're classed as investment. So it's just we view them as 2 different things because the bank reconciliation is the cash that's readily available to us.
Okay. So that the purpose in itself of the reconciliation is the ready cash. Those by definition are investments, not day-to-day holding. Okay.
I suppose one sort of slight supplemental question to that, but just because, so in your sort of, I suppose, your reserves account, I'm seeing that as being an instant access account, for want of a better word. Presumably there is a bit of differential at the moment between the interest rates of them.
Yes.
Between that, and I just wonder what drives, what's quite a high balance in that as to compared to the 32-day access account, to whether there should be less being kept in that ready money, to be honest. It seems like a lot of money considering what the costs actually the council are incurring.
It's always up for debate. I think I've got a fantastic spreadsheet where I try to track the cash flow and projects that are coming up. So I think
Because it sort of implies, and again, I might be getting it wrong, but it sort of implies to me, we're saying that within 32 days, you might spend up to 500 grand, which seems like a lot. Because I'm sure we're getting a better return on the 30 days money than we are on the instant money.
I think with the
I'm sure we're not going to spend £500,000 really.
it's not as much as 500,000, but with the work that we've got coming, so the main bit that's coming up is the demolition of the pavilions and the new building. So the idea was to keep it available, depending on how quickly we got planning back and how quickly that work could happen. So now we know we're not going to get planning for a little while on that. So it's all things like that I'm trying to juggle all the time. But I completely take your point on board.
We're in a falling rates environment. My only comment on it seems like a lot to have instant.
Okay, any further questions about the bank reconciliation report? Okay, all those in favour of receiving the reconciliations and noting the available funds, please raise your hand. Thank you, thank you. Okay, so the next item is outstanding income.
Thank you, Chair. So the report summarises the outstanding income as at the end of January. Because of the way we operate, the majority of our transactions are paid for the goods or services we provide and being received. This means that ordinarily we hold very low values of debt at any one time. The committee may wish to note that 2 of the 3 forum advertisers shown on page 25 are outstanding, but just to confirm, everything else has been paid. It's just those 2 that are still outstanding. They have been chased, and we've got a long-standing relationships with them. So I'm very confident that we'll receive the money by the end of the week, to be honest.
Okay.
Have to take any questions.
Is that within terms?
Yes. Because it's when with the forum, it's a case of when we send out the invoice to when the actual when forum goes out to print, when forum is actually delivered. So we're comfortable with the timeline.
So is that just so I'm clear, so the payment terms, is it from the date of publication of the form itself, or is it from when printing out?
That's the key deadline for me. Once it's once it's actually been posted out. So I want to make sure we've got the money definitely before then.
Okay.
Ideally, it would be before the sort of design work's been done, but it's just been it slipped a little bit. But as I say, I'm more than comfortable that we'll receive the funds.
Okay. Just from a procedural basis, so so if I receive an invoice from Harpenden Town Council because I've advertised it, I've taken the page in the forum for payment terms, so I know when to pay you.
Yeah.
What does it say? It's
30 days
from
the invoice date will be on
from the date of the invoice.
Yes.
All right. Okay. Okay, clear. Any more questions on that?
Sorry, but is there a reason why the Colts haven't paid?
Not particularly. I think it's
Admin.
where you've got smaller teams that have booked a pitch and then they may not have told the treasurer. So it was just that one has been paid, but it was just an admin thing within Colts, just making sure that the right person's got the right information.
I mean, I suppose the only other thing that just occurs is there's quite a lot of these are quite small payments. I just wonder, do you have a cost of processing those payments? Is there any of these where you should be thinking whether you can aggregate or so people aren't paying on a monthly basis, they pay on a quarterly basis or something? I don't know what your transaction charges are, Taylor.
I think that's a difficult thing to do, just because with, say, if it's a booking, so if it's a booking for the AGP or Park Hall or the farmers market, the way a lot of these small businesses
They do it
run.
each time.
Yeah, it's certainly, and it might be, oh, we want to book for this month. If it's a park hall booking, they might book for the month, but if it's a heat fit or a yoga type class, and they get higher numbers, they might be asking to extend and it change slightly.
And what is our processing? If you take the £37, the farmers market, what does it cost us to process that? Pound or?
I don't think I can give you a definitive answer on that, if I'm honest. 'Cause there's so many ways I could calculate it.
Sorry, I was thinking more bank charges and things like that for paying in, etc.
So there aren't any bank charges involved in it,
All right, okay,
with them paying directly.
okay.
So where they're making internet payment, they can't pay over the phone or anything like that. So there aren't any those sort of admin charges.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. If there's no more questions, everyone in favour of noting that schedule, please raise your hand. Good, thank you. Okay, next item is the budget updates. So this is looking at up to month 10.
Thank you, Chair. So this report outlines the budgetary position as at the end of January of this current financial year. If I can draw your attention to the appendix on page 32, it shows the actual income and expenditure compared to the revised budget. Towards the bottom of the page in blue, you can see that we've got a current favourable variance of 32,979. There aren't any new variances to highlight to the committee. However, in paragraph 5.10 on page 30, regarding car park income levels, this is the main variance between when we last met in January. All the further detail on variances can be found in section 5 on pages 28 to 30. So that's some stuff that we've discussed in the past. Let's take any questions.
I've got a question. I've got Churchill. On 5.10, I'm just wondering how that's increasing quite a bit. I can't remember what it was when we first came in. I think it's maybe nearly double what it was 4 years ago. Just in light of all the parking in Harpenden, I just wondered what everyone's feelings were on that increasing, and I'm quite relaxed about it. I just wondered what everyone thought about it.
This is on the cost,
Or the revenue that's coming from it.
the revenue. I think I'm not sure, but I think it'd be really interesting with Lidecker to understand a little bit more about now what's happening with it.
Yeah.
So
The why?
the why. So is it gone up because we've now got more enforceability? How actually is it, or is it being used more? I'm not convinced. It's one I use quite a bit. I think there probably is more people now who are paying it. Would be my take, rather than just getting up and walking out. I think
Maybe it's that. Yeah.
walk out, or they have the ability to use the app or something. I think it'd be quite interesting as something for us to understand a little bit more about what one of those follow-on effects is.
It's unquestionably busier than it was in the past. There's like it, no question at all.
Yes.
It's one I always used to use, not least because I think a lot of people didn't actually realise it was there.
Yeah.
And there's no real signage to it. And there was never a point. I've had an experience, certainly in the last few months, of turning up there and having to go down to Bowers East because there's been no spaces there at all. Now, that's just a natural function. People say some people charges against Bowers East or whatever. So I don't think that's surprising in any way. But there's no question in my mind that it's got heavier use, but it's heavier use because it's slightly cheaper to use and
You can park for longer.
in fact for longer. So so that's what you have. I don't think there's anything particularly surprising about that.
Is it much? I mean, what's the difference in cost? Do you know?
I can't remember at all what the difference is. It isn't huge. It's not.
It's an interesting one as well.
It's not particularly significant.
Because it's where we've got the spaces that we let to some of the local businesses as well, isn't it?
It's not significant.
I suppose it's just an interesting one to know from a capacity point of how much is there and how much is actually, because I think it is partly enforcement. I think partly there's or has been a view of going, or there was a view certainly earlier on, that there's lots of traffic wardens around, so people are more inclined to pay, which I think was certainly true of and one of the reasons I'm quite interested, I think that's quite an interesting thing to look at, is because I think some of that effect is disappearing. So but there are people who I know whose view is that now they park in the leisure centre or whatever and take a view of going, actually, I've parked there 5 times and haven't paid and I haven't been called. And I wonder whether again, at some point in time, this enforcement thing will come back as an interesting for our assets as well.
Yeah.
Because obviously it's useful to us to have that revenue. And this whole thing about whether it's enforcement or other things with parking, and surely enforcement, or whatever the rules are, is a good thing.
But do you know if people are parking for longer? But you should be able to get access to that sort of information, shouldn't you?
When I've asked for it before, I've not been able to get that level of detail from the district, from their reporting system. It's just been a case of each month, this is how much income has been received, and there's a split between pay by phone and everything else. So that's the only that level of detail I've ever been able to get.
Can't for the average
Yeah.
ticket price.
Yeah, so Chair, so we used to get full transaction details, so per potential, booking option. But we don't get that anymore.
I mean, they must have that, because I don't see how they can come up with charging us £7,500 and how they're giving us revenue unless they know that. I think it would be really useful because it's one of those things that allows us to more. For me, it'd be a really useful, interesting thing to see. We haven't changed anything else. Was the revenue much higher at the start and then it's tailed off, which says to me that's less about how it's changing and more. Well, there is definitely something in there around enforcement, because I think that may be something that's more significant going forward. And I think it's easy for them to give us we should ask for that information, my view.
Yeah, okay, I can certainly ask again. Yeah,
We used to know how many enforcement visits there actually were at that car park, and we still know or none.
We're not provided that information anymore.
Oh, right, 'cause we used to have that.
Yeah. Yeah, Chair, that information stopped when we started to query some of the lack of attendance. No longer got that monthly statistics. I think we used to share it with the councillors.
Yeah, that's what I remember seeing it. It wasn't a large number of enforcement visits, but I don't know how that comes
You
back.
just need enough.
It wasn't, no.
Yeah.
I think the key thing at the time, Chair, was that it was the number of visits to Liddicar was significantly less than the number of Bowers Way East. And the council at the time had assumed that if they were visiting Bowers Way East, they would always go up to Liddicar. But that was some time ago. The only observation I would just make on this is that this is part of the piece of work that council said it would look at its last meeting when it was looking at the parking research in terms of what the town council can do with its assets in the future. So that this is a bit of work that is
We'll get some info back on. Yeah.
And just out of interest, the £7,500 that we're paying, which is under obviously, well, it's difficult, which is under some sort of agreement, contract with them to run it. Does that renew? Do we get to look at the terms of that at some point in time or something, or is it on a never? Because I'm sorry, some of the things like the stats, if there's a renewal coming up and we're not getting the statistics from it, we should be making sure that incorporated into that contract at the next opportunity is a proper set of KPIs of, how many payments are being made, what's the average length of payment, how many enforcement visits, how much is being charged on fines, presumably fines for enforcement visits that are there do not come to us, or just so if traffic warden goes around and puts a ticket there for somebody staying over, that's not revenue to us, I presume. That's revenue to district council. Again, I think that'd be a really interesting statistic to understand. Probably people don't realise that, I guess.
Yeah. So, Chair, my only observation on that is that I'm fairly sure that the town council gets a very good deal from that arrangement at the moment.
Right.
But looking forward with the local government reorganisation, have you got any idea what's going to happen? In terms of, because who has control over that car park and what a very good deal, I suppose, could change potentially.
Yeah, I mean, so I think car parks are one of those assets that are kind of high on the agenda for LGR and what happens to the ones we've got already, but also other ones that are out there. So I think as part of, once the council understands what LGR looks like, car parks are one of many assets that we'll be looking at business case for, either in terms of trying to take on more, or if the changes to LGR mean, or if LGR means an impact on us in other ways, i.e. through increased enforcement. So I would imagine at that point in time, whether the town council ends up taking more car parks or not, we would want to assess whether we have our own enforcement approach, because of course we can actually bring our own enforcement in-house, or indeed go out to another external contractor.
And I think that's why we should try and get stats, because it's very difficult to. So I agree with you. It probably is a good deal. It's very difficult to say it's a good deal or a bad deal without actually knowing what it is.
Yeah, I mean, Chair, I mean, the difficulty here is we're in a public meeting. It is a very good deal for the town council.
Yeah,
it is a very good deal. So for some time now, the district council, we've been in discussions about that management contract, and we haven't pushed it because we know we're getting a very good deal.
Well, when's the contract come up for renewal?
It's on a rolling basis at the moment.
Okay, I think the point about getting the management information, and I know you've tried, and I'm sure there's been good reasons why it's not coming through. But I think just probably the interest of both parties that information about usage, the revenue, the source of revenues, is a volume effect, is an enforcement effect, that we have that, because I think just it's one of our important assets, right?
It is, yeah, Chair. So we'll continue to ask for that. I think some of the information that the district have published recently on parking does show that they must have that transactional information.
Yeah.
So you know, we'll keep pushing for that, and that will help inform the council.
I think if I remember from the number that the total district take on car parking charge 250,000 or something, which 60,000 from Lydecker seems like an awful lot in comparison with that. But then they had a huge amount off, 750,000 off penalties and 750,000 off permits. So it's just trying to work out where that actually sits over, because that seems like very interesting set of stats, to be honest, considering the size of that car park with the other car parking pieces, and that's across the whole district, not just Harpenden. So the fact that one Harpenden car park is producing 60 grand of revenue, and the whole of all the district council car parks, I think, are producing 250 grand of revenue. Seems like a
very big number, doesn't it?
Seems like a remarkable thing, which just sort of makes you want to delve into a bit of the detail of the stats.
Yeah. I have a question on another topic, if I may.
Please.
The trees, obviously, we've had a not a great year for tree settling costs. When we did the survey, was anything picked up? As in, do we think we're going to have another couple of years where it's going to be really expensive, or do we think we've dealt with a lot of it and it's going to kind of swing back to its usual?
So it should level off.
Right.
So the health and safety surveys are done every 18 months. So we've done, or in the process, I think it's been done, all of the work relating to that survey. So there shouldn't be, it should just be the normal maintenance for the next 18 months until that next survey. So all of the urgent work, where it's done in, it's red, amber, green.
Is there a lot in amber then? I know we had someone around our garden and they flagged that in three years' time, there was like a number of trees that would be needing to come down. I'm just wondering if we've got any, like a few more years of kind of high, or whether actually we've dealt with a lot of remedial stuff and we're going to go back to kind of a normal year. Or we just don't know.
I think it's difficult to say, Chair, really. I would anticipate these costs to continue into the foreseeable, because for a number of reasons, there is an increase in pressure on trees. You know, we had this what's it called, limb drop syndrome that started to become sort of apparent last summer across the country, where just some of the dry weather was meaning lots of places were just seeing large limbs fall off.
Yeah.
Bear in mind, a lot of our bigger trees, those sorts of jobs are £2,000-3,000 themselves. The other thing to note is that our figures for trees in terms of our number of trees are based on the size. So as trees grow, more trees will become
More
sort of
probably.
surveyable.
Yeah.
The old trees will become older.
Yeah.
We were out looking at a tree in Roughampstead Park yesterday, which was a tree that was deemed to be fine in the survey, but actually since the survey's taken place, our visual inspections have shown that actually there are some issues. So, you know, I think, and we've made
So it's going to continue at that kind
I
of.
think we've made adjustments in the budget for next year, an increase in the tree management. So I would expect these figures to stay the same, but they're also unknown. You know, a terrible winter
Yeah.
could mean 20, 25 grand's worth of tree works, of which we have no choice over.
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
So I would expect that to just be a real ongoing pressure, I would say.
Thank you. Anything else from me?
Okay, very good. Any further questions or comments on the report? Okay, all those. Oh,
In 5.11, you say that there's a result of reducing level of planned capital expenditure. That's why it caused the cash level to be high. What sort of reduction is it mainly from?
So the main one was the change in specifications of the pavilion. So where we had bigger aspirations to have a larger pavilion there, but that's not been viable. So that's the main reason for the change in cash flow over the years.
thank you. Any remaining questions on the budget update, please? Okay. And so all those in favour of A, noting the report and noting the release of the reserves, please raise your hand. Very good, thank you. Okay. Next item on the service buildings, please.
Thank you, Chair. So this paper updates the committee about the service level agreements for several local organisations and seeks approval for the renewal of the SLA with the Rotary in Harpenden until March 2029. So that's a renewal of their current one. It also invites a decision on the requested increase from Harpenden Lions for their increased costs in running the Highland Gathering. So they've asked for an increase from 1,000 to 1,500, which is again until March 2029. Have to take any questions.
Why are we approving the renewal of the service agreement for Rotary, but only noting the renewal for the service level? Has that been approved earlier on, or should that say approved the renewal?
213, I think.
I didn't understand why there was a difference in the wording.
So it was just to approve the Rotary for classics, but for the Lions, just to note the information, note the increase, and then make a decision about. So 2.1.4 is to kind of make a decision about whether you want to stick with the 1,000 or increase it up to the 1,500.
So I guess my next question is if the Lions understandably have got an increase in costs and running the Highland Gathering, are there not the similar cost pressures on running classics? Or just Rotary have not asked anything?
They've not requested an increase.
Do you know what the increase is for? £1,500.
Just general increase in costs. So general kind of inflationary costs of running the Highland Gathering. I don't think I've got any specifics about any costs. Obviously, in the past, we've seen big increase in traffic management, but obviously for the Highlands Gathering, we haven't got that factor, but I haven't got any further detail on that, I'm afraid.
Yeah, Chair, I mean, just on that, so we know from our own events that infrastructure costs have gone up sort of significantly. So it is things from staging to musicians to lighting. The Lions this year are actually required to have some traffic management because of some recommendations that we made from last year that I wasn't happy with in terms of what's going on. So there are additional costs on that. Just the one observation I would make is that with these third-party events, is that when their costs go up, they tend to come to the town council to help cover those costs, as opposed to lower the what they distribute to charities. So that in itself is kind of an interesting conundrum, if you like. So potentially using more public funds in order to cover the costs, and that you're not sending, so they don't have to send less off to charities, often charities that aren't in Harpenden. So it's important for you just to be aware of that as
Yeah.
well. That's the context.
Would you not normally, because the charity isn't based, it's not that it's based in Harpenden, it's whether it's beneficial to Harpenden residents, isn't it?
Yeah, that's part of their consideration. But just as a comparison, so the town council say summer carnival historically, when our costs have gone up, that's meant that we have to balance the budget for it. So inevitably, that's meant we've been able to give less to charity because our costs have gone up on that. Whereas our partners that we've supported for a long time, and I'm not saying we shouldn't continue to, but they try to avoid those costs hitting ultimately the money that goes out to the charity.
Yeah, I mean, it went up by, it's gone up by effectively over 100% in 2 years then, isn't it? The 3.2 says that we've increased by 300%. Sorry, 300%. £300 up to 1,000 in March 24.
I mean, my recollection of
for the cost.
the Highland Gathering is that it's a much smaller event than it used to be.
Yeah, Chair, I would probably agree with that. I think post-COVID, it's one that probably hasn't recovered to what it was
Is it
before. No, I don't think so. And that's kind of based on my own observations. When I went to it last year, and it was a brilliant event, I hadn't been to it for a few years, and I kind of remember there being much greater bands, much sort of travelled bands. So I think it's just one that has suffered. What I would say, Chair, is I think as officers we would support these, certainly the renewals and the increase, because they are important events for the town. They do have an element of bringing people in. I would also note that it's just important to say that actually the in-kind support that we give to these events far outweighs these costs as well. So the officer time that we give to each of them. So our contribution is much more than just the financial side of the thing.
Is it worth just for noting as part of it, just having how much they do raise? So it's sort of something over time can look at. But my guess, I'm purely guessing it, but my guess is, for example, the Rotary raised a lot more on classics and the Common than just because it's so busy than the Highland Gathering that. As to how, i.e. what percentage it is, and because if nothing else, that shows what we're doing is priming the pump for something which is doing. And then the other one is probably a good thing again to note against it, which is the local charities they're supporting. So in giving that 1,500 quid towards the Highland Gathering or the Common, what are they doing for the local community? Because I think if you're encompassing that, it should show it's a really good sort of pump priming type thing. We're putting a little bit of money, but actually putting a lot of money back into the local community.
In support of that statement, we kind of do that in 3.5.3.6 anyway. So we mentioned the King's Pantry, and there's some good metrics there about the kinds of support we do, and similarly with Casted, we do that. So,
but I'm being sort of more analytical with it, of just 1,500 in, how much is it, and it's supporting these 5 charities, this much to this one, this one to this one.
I think that's irrelevant.
It just gives a really nice encompassed piece there of going, by giving 1,500 quid, we're raising £7,000-8,000, which is going for the community, which is.
Yes, so we've got those figures. We can share them with the committee afterwards, and
Yes,
I'll include them in future.
Yes, please.
As well. The other thing to note, Chair, is and it probably was 3 years ago now when we started the last set of SLAs. The council insisted on a change to their approach to district funding to ensure that there was always local charities, whereas historically we didn't have any control over that. So that was a shift that we made last time to ensure at least a percentage of that funds they raised goes to local.
Because I think sometimes when you look at all of this, you need to look at the round going, there's so much going out. And there comes a point in time when you go, well, where are you getting value for money? So where are you? What is our little bit of help? Get a disproportionate help out of other pieces.
Well, to your point, the other part of this, and it was mentioned and it's in my mind, these events bring a lot of people into the town.
Yep.
Who spend money in the town. I'm a petrol head, so I'm always up at the classics on the common.
A lot of people park.
I am stunned at how busy the
The
town
volume
is.
of people,
You
yeah.
got pubs,
Yeah.
heaving the silver cup, that's got to be part of the consideration.
Events, aren't they?
Yeah.
In their own way.
And I'm sure a lot of the local businesses rely on these events. I don't think we can just look at it as, how much are they doing for charity?
But even on the charity, I bet they come right at the top of value, paying for pennies.
Is there any way to quantify what the economic benefit to the town is?
Well, never less than it'd be hard to judge it.
Well, that would be something better than nothing.
Yeah, Chair, there are sort of social value research companies out there. There are some councils, large councils, that have done pieces of work on that, and they've been able to identify for every £1 of community spend they put in, they get X number of pounds back. Those are quite large studies.
What would be an interesting one on that basis, though, is just how many tickets. So how many people actually went to the gathering last year? How many people bought tickets and went to Classics on the Continent? They'll have those numbers.
That isn't done by tickets.
Well, that's tricky because
People with
People-
bookings collecting money.
yeah.
But the kind of gathering they do is the program is your ticket. The other ones you do because they know how many badges they've. Well, I think they'll give a pretty good estimate.
cars on the common have to pay, don't they? They pay to
Depends on how limited as well.
and then there's voluntary donations.
It'll be pretty impressive numbers.
Okay, any further comments or questions? I just had a couple of questions on the SLAs themselves. I mean, have you found, are the documents themselves, they fit for purpose? They help manage the relationship? Have you found any issues or defects?
No, there's no changes, Chair, from in format from 3 years ago, and there hasn't been any issues.
So both you and the other parties, they're fit for purpose, they help you manage the relationship, obligations and all of that?
Yeah, Chair, I would describe them as kind of robust but light touch as well. They
Yeah.
reflect the language.
Like 70 pages. Okay, fair enough. Okay, thank you. So, go to the vote. So I'll just take it as a bundle, if I may. So all of those in favour of noting the reports, approving the renewal of the SLA with Rotary, noting the increase in the, noting the renewal of the service level agreement with the Lions and approving the increase of the Lions SLA from 1,000 to £1,500 per annum. Please raise your hands. Okay, thank you, everybody. Good. Okay, next item is about the criteria review for the community grant fund.
Yeah. This report asks members to consider mainly whether the future applications should be taken annually or on a rolling basis as they are at the minute. In the actual criteria, there aren't any changes from when we reviewed it this time last year. But I'm happy to tell you if there are any alterations that the committee would like to the criteria, then happy to take those away. But as I say, the main thing is about making a decision whether we're happy to continue as we are on a rolling basis or consider just making it a fixed annual application process.
The committee, any thoughts or questions? I mean, I guess the question is partly what you think. I suppose the advantage of doing it on an annual basis is you can compare across all of them to make the decision of that one's better or not. But it does seem to me that we don't generally spend all of what we've got in it anyway. So I'm not sure there's a huge advantage in doing that annual base. If you were at a basis where you were having to make choices, and so earlier on you'd made a choice which meant you couldn't do something later on, then it makes sense. But otherwise, I'm convinced personally that it's that you need to change it.
I'm in favour of having it done annually. I know, having done some of these piecemeal, you sometimes lack context where you see something that might be worthwhile, but you hedge against it and thinking, well, maybe there's something else that will come later in the year that's worthwhile. I think having it all in front of you and making a judgment on all of them at the same time I can't see any major drawback of doing that. I know there's one of the items, reduced flexibility, or discourage smaller spontaneous initiatives. But I feel if there's people have got a genuine case, and they feel it's worthwhile, then a bit of patience to do it annually would probably be appreciated.
But, the point I would make is that do you, in assessing 3 applications at the same time, are you meant to make a comparison between them, or do you look at them standalone? Is that clear from? Because what you're in effect saying is there's however many applications you have in, are they going to be compared? And is that what you're happy for that to happen, that they're compared? I mean, it might be.
I would suggest they shouldn't be compared.
I don't think they should be compared. Because how can you compare a hedgehog sanctuary with
Arts,
or something for
photography, and whatever it
or
is.
something for deprived
Yeah.
people?
Yeah.
You can't compare.
I feel sorry for the hedgehog.
Yeah.
The only thing I would say is that's fine as long as you're not hitting up against a financial head cap.
A budget,
If
yeah.
you've got a budget and you've only got to spend, then that's where you have to compare, because you have to make the decision of going, if I've only got £4,000, do I want to spend it on people or on hedgehogs?
You'd have that decision at any point through the year but your decision would be
Spend money on
reduced.
the hedgehogs and then it comes
Decision
along.
would be reduced, yeah.
But my point earlier was, I don't see us against that. That cap at the moment. Once you get to a point where you're against the cap, then I think it's different if you were at the point of being against the cap.
I think it would be very difficult to, I mean, I see your point, but if you've got everybody there all at once, how you don't subconsciously think,
It's not ranking them or whatever.
I think we do that anyway.
Do you
When
think?
we do it piecemeal, certainly in my mind, I'm thinking, well, is that worthwhile? Could there be something better coming along?
Yeah.
And then there's an opportunity missed, perhaps, or
I think the key difference, Chair, would be if we went to an annual process, when we received or when we presented to committee national applications, we would have to introduce some sort of scoring mechanism. So you would see them kind of with a score against them based on the criteria that would start to give you an indication of what as officers we felt would be more priority. And then ordinarily what you would do in that sort of grant setting, you would take those, the highest ones to start with. Committee would assess those. Do they agree? Okay, yeah, we're definitely going to support number 1. If we support number 1, that means we've still got enough to support number 2. Have we still got enough to do number 3 in the rank? So there'd be a scoring mechanism that you'd have to
And
introduce.
in your assessment, how workable and valid would that system be? Or could it sort of lead you down a mathematically correct, but from a content perspective, sort of a misleading impression of the applications? What's your sense on that?
So I think the scoring is only ever an indication, and the town council would never be kind of bound by those that score the highest at that point. But it starts to give the committee an indication as to what has performed well against your criteria, if you like. So, and if you went to an annual process, you're probably looking at an approval thinking about this year, you're probably looking at approval in September, and in June looking at what's your scoring mechanism, and then a launch over the sort of summertime through to September. And that's probably realistic. We wouldn't be able to launch before June.
It's very difficult not to take the top scores, because if you don't take the top scores, the scoring criteria is wrong. You should change the scoring criteria, not choose not.
That's what you'd have to agree what your criteria is. And the criteria would be some quantitative stuff and also some qualitative stuff.
But also from the people that have applied, they're going to go, well, we scored more than them. And if they don't get it, they're not going to.
It also makes it much more people who know how to do the application to hit this game, for want of a better word, game the system on scoring rather than necessarily on
Just going back to basics, what works best for you? What is administratively the most efficient way of doing it? To me, that cuts through all this.
Yeah, I think it's a good question. So because we've never done an annual application process here, it's difficult to compare. But having run large grant funds elsewhere that have always been annual process, I know the kind of benefit of them. And my view is that because we've always done it sort of ad hoc, there's no harm in piloting, even if it's for 1 year, an annual process. And if you did that based on assessing in September, if in September there isn't enough applications to use all the money, we've still then got the opportunity to put out a second round to kind of get others that might come forward. I think an annual process does start to focus the mind on some community groups when they've got a hard deadline to apply to. I think we will create much more demand, and that in itself is a risk to us because often they're oversubscribed, these funding pots, so that then makes it a difficult decision and you're raising expectations of community groups. So that's kind of another sort of con to it, but in some ways, Chair, I think it's not something we've done before, and there's no harm in piloting for a year to see.
So some would say you should never split the difference, but what about going to a twice yearly process? I'm trying to think about the balance between the administrative burden. I actually do think you can compare between different propositions, but that's just my personal opinion. But also just without creating like a sort of a surge of activity for you at one point in the year that distracts you from other activities. So maybe a twice yearly 6 monthly process.
Chair, I think if you agree to do that in advance, you're in danger of still being in the sort of position that Councillor Timmins said, where once you do the first tranche, you might be looking at them going, well, are we going to get something else later on in the year? So my advice would be if you're thinking about doing a kind of a hard date, do one to start with, but with a view that if you don't get enough applications through, then we're going to open it up again to perhaps some ad hoc for the rest of the year. I think there's also a practical point. If if you did two, the first one would have to be September. At the time you did a second one, you're getting sort of close to probably March time anyway. But I mean, it's an option you could go with, yes.
The problem with the scoring system as well is it does the power, for want of the better word of it, is the person who scores it, not the person who's looking at the list. Therefore, I think less of the decision goes to those sat around this table and more to the people who are presenting the list.
I see your point, but I would just take the scoring as a point of view, and all of us have been elected to exercise our own judgment, and if we consider that more or less, we have the freedom to disagree.
I think you always have, but I think you have to look at the scoring. If you set the scoring up correctly, you've got to have a reason not to put, if the top five are in it, you've got to have a reason, if you're funding five, you've got to have a reason not to do those top five and be able to articulate that reason.
Our discussion is open to the public. We can have a disagreement, and actually the discussion often yields new information.
Yeah. I think, Chair, the other way to look at the scoring is perhaps not necessarily like a hard number. What we could also do is you could introduce some sort of RAG rating, so that a part of our assessment that comes to you, we do that assessment, and we clearly have some that we might think are red, and so are not, don't meet a minimum standard. You might clearly have some that are green, that are you're sort of highly aligned to the priorities, and you might have some in the middle. In which case, then you haven't necessarily got a ranking. You might have groups, a number of applications within each grouping that you then look at the greens first. You know, you deal with those ones. If you've got funding, and you look at the end. But that's another.
Yeah, I would say that we always welcome your advice and information, but we've all been elected to exercise our own judgment. If we choose to disagree, we've been elected to have that rights. Hopefully we'll have a consensus amongst the committee. And like I said before, I think often the discussion just surfaces new information which wasn't available previously. And I personally find that a very important part of this committee, and I value the contributions of all members to that debate. So I wouldn't have a problem with disagreeing with your assessment on the basis of the discussion with my fellow councillors.
I mean, I suppose the thing about the assessment is you have to be very careful about unconscious bias,
True, it's a fair point.
because it might not be the intention. It might be
We all have unconscious bias, don't we? It's unconscious, really. But yeah, it's the more people that look at it, the more it's removed, isn't it? Because you've got different biases.
Okay, so just steering everyone towards a conclusion on this. Thank you for the agenda item. What are people's sort of thoughts on this? I mean, we're going to ask to option A is, I guess, do nothing. And we can also move to an annual window. I'm happy to have a free vote on this.
Yeah, I was going to just ask do we want to go annual, yes or no, and maybe take a vote on it? See where everyone there.
So just to set this up properly, so town clerk, just have all those in favour of moving to a single annual process versus keeping the current rolling process, raise their hands. So I think that's.
Yep.
So all those in favour of moving to a single annual process, raise your hand. 2, 3, 4. All those in favour of keeping the current 4 to 3. How does my vote count?
You get a vote and a casting vote.
I will let these votes stand. So I think we voted 4 to 3 in favour of moving to the annual process. Okay. Very good, thank you. Oh, sorry, I did have a couple of, these are sort of minutiae. I did find a couple of points in the application itself a bit repetitive. So, for example, in section 6, there's an item about reducing inequalities. Then in 9B, there's about promoting equal opportunities. I thought that was a bit repetitive. You could probably drop 9B because you're covering that in 6. And I think that was it. There's just a bit of trivia.
Can I just say, actually, I'm not sure I agree with that, because that's a tick box, and that 9B is a tune to explain in greater detail. And I think that is quite useful. Personally. Reducing inequalities, I mean, who's going to tick no?
Fair point, but fair point.
Well, I think to articulate it within the form of a sentence or 2 sentences would be helpful.
That's a very fair point. I'll just add to that. I mean, there are 8 criteria set out in section 6. We've only allowed one of those criteria, if you like, the opportunity to be explained. So, for example, we're not inviting people to say how did it support individuals with disabilities or support the needs of older people.
But those are all equal opportunities issues, aren't they?
So I think
People with disabilities, older people, those are all people who can be subject to inequality.
So I think you have to think about this, having agreed now you're going to do it annually and you're going to go through some sort of scoring process. You have to look at this form right the way from the start, because I don't think this form is going to work for you to be able to work out what it's scored. You need to start again. Something because it's gonna. There's too many bits. In some ways, there's how you end up with green, red, amber, whatever you're going to have. You need to come up with a proposal of how that's going to work, and then what the form is that's going to give you the information to score the system. Just kind of we agree or we voted for to have it on an annual basis. We now need to come up with the system and agree what the system is on the annual basis. Yeah, that's what that. Do you need to take a vote on that?
Yeah, so I think, Chair, you'd be basically voting to add this to the formal plan for June as to what that looks like with a view of then launching once you've agreed the application process.
All those in favour of that process, please raise your hand. Okay, thank you. Right, I think next item is to look at the media policy. Page 57. Yes.
So this is the draft media policy for your consideration and approval. The policy provides a clear framework of how the council communicates with the media in a consistent and responsible manner.
Is there a current media policy or is it something new?
think it's a new.
Yeah, so it's a new standalone policy, Chair. I think there are a number of other documents we've got already that refer to press and media, like standing orders, like a community engagement strategy. Strictly speaking, there is an old media policy, but that's probably from about 2007 or something like that when we look at the old files. So this is basically taking the bits from the standing orders, the community engagement, and our principles of how we've always applied press and media and putting it into a policy that signed up to and then delivered it.
And this is for the town council officers, not town councillors.
It's for the town council. So
Okay,
it's very explicitly talks in there about what individual town councillors can't do. In terms of that.
I've read the thing.
Um,
This one.
So my slight concern with this, just having been actively involved on a day job basis of as these things are changing, they are changing very rapidly on a sort of almost month by month basis, driven by social media, AI and things like this. And there's already quite a lot of stuff in here which isn't in this around those forms of and intellectual property pieces which are not in. I wonder whether there isn't another, but I don't know, presumably this is one that's come out as a standard for councils to use. I wonder whether there isn't a more up-to-date version of that, particularly dealing with sort of how information is posted on by individuals and people from the council, commenting on, or it's the things like, you know, use of Twitter and things like that. If you announce that you're an officer of the council or a councillor or something, then you make those sort of things. I'm surprised. I now when I see these things, they tend to have lots of pieces around that in how you can use your title and when you're making public statements and what forums you're making those public statements in.
Yeah, so Chair, I think it depends on there's two different groups of people you mentioned there. So in terms of councillors, this does set the framework for what councillors can and can't do in line with the code of conduct, which is very clear on media and press. So, you know, this doesn't supersede anything that is in the code of conduct. In terms of employees, that is separate to this. That's something that's covered by employee contracts and other HR matters in terms of what employees can and can't do. This is focused on the town council's approach to the press and media, and it's a policy that I think gives a framework, but also flexibility, which I think is important within these sorts of documents.
Would you not? I would not expect to have something around, for example, when people post on social media.
What people do you mean?
Sorry, be it a councillor or a councillor or an office, a councillor office, or in either their official role or that grey area between whether it's an official role or not.
I wouldn't know, because I think the councillor side of things is covered by the code of conduct, and we allude to it in here that you can't post and in a way that either directly says you're speaking on behalf of the council or alludes to that. And sense from an employee perspective, that's covered in employee handbook type stuff. And the employee side is a very grey area, in fact, and there's been some recent court cases that in particular, employers have to be very careful about restrictions they try to place on employees as well.
And that covers, for example, that's obvious for a councillor, where if I phone up Harpenden, sorry, not Harpenden, Herts Times, but if I post on my Facebook page or my Twitter feed, you're happy that the combination of this, and I say, well, that's a private Twitter feed. In fact, I've got 150,000 followers, still private to me other than those followers. You're happy that that's covered?
As a councillor, yeah, within code of conduct stuff, yeah, without doubt. You know, essentially, you as individual town councillors can, you know, have freedom to express yourself as you see it, as long as you're not doing that with confidential information, or you're presenting in that way that either is directly or gives the perception that you're speaking on behalf of the town council. Again, that's very clear in the code of conduct. We've lifted a little bit on that here, and that applies whether you've got a private sort of Facebook or a public one. Yeah.
Okay.
Very good. Any further questions or comments? Okay, so we're being asked to consider and approve this draft media policy. All those in favour of approving, please raise your hand. Thank you. The next item is just an update on supporting vulnerable people, working class updates. Over to you, Dan.
Thank you, Chair. So the update summarises the progress on the Working Party's key areas. So that's dementia-friendly Harpenden, young people's mental health, and the Blackford neighbourhood. The report also presents related action plans and summaries in the appendices. One of the recent initiatives I'd like to highlight to the committee is the successful Blackford Community Connect event, which happened on the 30th of January. The event brought together key partners from several local groups and organisations, including the Harpenden Trust, CAB, Bethany Church, the police and others, all working together to support the residents of Blackford. But happy to take any questions. And
I think it was brilliant, yes.
Very detailed report, and there's going to be lots. Really good activity going on. What's this? Do we know what the operational status is of the former Harpenden Public Court? I know it's been acquired by the Christ Church, but is it open? Is it operational? Is it active, or is it still sort of shut?
It's got, what's it? Asbestos.
So it's closed.
I think I've got to clear out the asbestos from that.
Yeah, Chair, my understanding is that they've been going through a process of securing planning permission for the works they need to carry out.
Yeah.
And I'm not 100% whether they've secured that, but that's at the stage they're on now. And then the next stage is obviously serious refurbishment.
Yes.
It's not a facility I can see being open anytime soon, certainly not its current state.
Okay. Any other questions about the report? Okay, right. So take these three actions as a bundle. So all those in favour of A, noting the report itself, noting the summary and actions connected with the themes in Appendix A, and noting the Depenture Town Action Plan, and to continue supporting the Depenture Friendly Harpenden for further 2 years. All those in favour? Great, Harry, thank you. Right, next item is update on the Harpenden.
Thank you, Chair. So this report presents the monthly information from the Harpenden Collective. They've provided the normal, really good narrative that was provided to everyone by the email when the pack was sent out for the work they've done over the last quarter. I've included a basic summary in the table on page 77, paragraph 3.5. But I noticed I missed one of the boxes, so that was it's 530 was the stat that I lifted from the pack that I missed out on there. So apologies about that, Chair.
So in the October, December, for that should be 530.
So, yeah.
Okay.
Of Hart's businesses, base businesses through the door.
In October to December 25. Okay, fine. Thanks. Any questions from the committee? All right, all those in favour of noting the report, please raise your hand. Thank you. And same for Casto, please. So, any interest in payment?
Thank you. So this is the CAB information for quarter 3, showing 147 clients helped with 459 separate issues. The committee may wish to note case studies provided by CAB are at the bottom of page 81 that tries to bring to life some of the stats that they've provided.
I mean, the biggest thing in this to me is that the impact's that's been made is double what it was same quarter last year. From 45 to 90,000, which is
Okay, very good. So, those in favour of noting the report? Okay, thank you. And I think we've received a community grant application. Would you like to walk us through that, please, Danny?
Thank you, Chair. So the community grant requests a total of £1,517. This funding will contribute to the delivery of the Watershed Community Arts Project, supporting the creation of a new art installation at All Saints Church in Blackford and a programme of associated community events. The grant will specifically fund materials and equipment for the artwork, resources for public workshops and activities, refreshments for community events, and the production of visitor information and promotional materials. The committee may also wish to note, as per section 13 on page 88, All Saints Church have allocated £500 to help cover the cost of the events held within the church. Happy to take any questions on the grant application. Questions from the committee, please?
When is this event? When is this installation?
I think on page 86, the anticipated end date to take down is 27th of April.
So they're applying for something in April. So in a year's time. Be able to maybe have to have planned ahead.
That's April this year, is it not?
This year.
Talking about the annual process.
Then
Yes.
Yeah. Exactly one that was true.
yeah.
Any opinions for or against the application?
Well, yeah, I was just looking at the bank statements. I see money going in, and then money coming out by the individuals, but not really knowing what that's for. 500 from 1,300 from the sergeant. It's an accountability issue, really. I don't really know where their money's going. That I've seen today.
There is a sort of set of accounts in 90 plus. That's difficult to interpret it, quite frankly.
Okay.
I think 95 is a budget, which I assume includes whatever. I mean, obviously, this is a budget, not an actual spend to date, anyway. Because obviously, the way they've worked out the very specific number, 1,517, is specifically by adding up the numbers on the left-hand side and deducting the assumed right-hand side. That's how they arrived at the number. The issue really is, what's the outreach of this? How many, is this something that's going to be of interest to a limited number of people down there, or is it going to be something of wider interest within the Harpenden community? I think that's the key question is in this. I'm sure it's a really worthy project in its own right. But if the people who are going to benefit by the art is an extremely limited number, I mean, so the question is, how is this going to sort of be publicised and, to encourage people to go to All Saints Batford? Because since you'll notice it outside All Saints Batford, I would suggest it won't actually attract a huge number of people. So my concern this is, as a community project, how many of the community become aware of it? And of those who become aware of it, how many would feel they've had a benefit from going to see this exhibition? That's the question. No idea about what the answer to that is, I have to admit. But that seems to me to be the question, as I said, it's of interest. Art installations are very much a personal thing, aren't they?
We've spoken a bit about the marketing of it in 3.3. Local Nature Reserve, National Conservation Groups, Arts and Middlesex Wildlife Trust, RSPB, River Actions, Town Mayor, local MP, local schools visiting. So I think they almost agree with you in a way. They need to promote it to get
They
that,
do.
to get the traction of it.
If the minute sister, but I'm not sure what they're going to do
To generate it,
To
no,
generate
but they're obviously in their,
I mean, what I'm struggling with is I can't visualize it. I think like a picture or a graphic or a sketch would be helpful just to bring it to life. I'm struggling to visualize what this would actually look like.
The other thing a little bit with this is, so when you look at what they're actually spending the money on, there's the materials and equipment. Yeah, that's kind of a physical piece there. Then artist travel, transportation, musicians for evening event, 600 quid. Refreshments for event. A lot of this is effectively holding an event and getting people to go to an event. And I just wonder, in the context, thinking around, you know, your future scoring system and etc., as to whether, you know, if this was, whether all of those items which are on the left-hand side for expenditure all rank in the same way. So spending something on materials is one thing, spending something for 600 quid for musicians for event maybe doesn't feel quite the same.
Especially, well, you know, what's the purpose of the community grant? I tend to think of something that's an investment. This is an investment, but it's an extremely short-term investment. I'm trying to think what its return in terms of what the immediate benefit to the community is. It's a laudable project. And
very short term, isn't it?
it's extremely short term. I'm not sure what the value is to the overall values to the community for the use of community grant from the council. These things are so subjective, it's a problem.
Am I hearing any voices in strong support of this application?
Well, I think in response to what John's just said, I would say that we talked about what the what's the common thing? Classics
On the common.
and there's Highland Gathering, what those events bring, and they're one day.
They are one day, and
So
an awful lot more than this for the cost of
yeah,
putting into them.
without putting into them.
No, the cost we are putting into.
We are putting into them.
So we've just said there's 1,000 or 1,500, and they are clearly making a much more substantial community benefit than this. I don't think there's any question about that.
No, but in terms of, we can't quantify what an event like the Classics on the Common is, and it's also difficult to quantify what this is.
It is.
And if they're getting in contact with schools and encouraging schools to go along, that's a big group, and it's also a sort of different group that attends Classics on the Common.
This possibly comes right down to this whole scoring system. And I think this is really interesting in starting to work out as to how you score. So is it important that 20,000 people come to Classics on the Common? Is that a criteria to do it? Or is it the fact that it's school children that are being impacted? Or, and sorry, I just raised this as being, we're going to have to get heads around this as part of this if we're going to go to this annual scoring system. And, you know, is it better for 500 school kids to get access to something, or 20,000 people to come and spend their money in Hartlepool?
But it won't be just kids, it will be other people will.
I still, I mean, I suppose my piece with this is if I look at that expenditure piece there, could you run this with the same impact for less than the £2,255? Do you need spend £600 on musicians? Do you need £300 on? And would you look at this differently if it was, again, more of a sort of pump priming? The difference on this being basically the town council is funding 3/4 of it. Whereas I think for me, the difference on Classics on the Common or the Highland Gathering is the town council is probably funding, I don't know, 10% or 15% of it. And it's all about this. How much this is a town council event, it seems to me, basically funding 75%. Whereas the other things, we're priming the pump, providing some funding to crowd in an awful lot of other funding that's happening.
One of the things is the first iteration was exhibited in St Albans Cathedral in May 25, but they don't really say anything about the application, what the impact of that was. That'd be interesting.
Or even a picture of it. Or even a picture of what it is.
Probably marginal because St Albans Cathedral in its own right pulls in people.
Yeah.
Yes.
Not the value of that. Kind of have a different perspective, if I may say, because I think they're asking for 2000s and most of the events are, according to their notes, are happening in April. And kind of they have about 6 or 7 events, at least without the school visits. So when you divide the 2000 by 6 or 7 events, if they're really happening, then it's just a couple of hundred per event. So I think the money they're asking for is not per the number of event is not like really like huge. And on top of that, I think most importantly, kind of we have to think about because I don't have a picture about what XAP will do in April in Bedford, but if it can create because comparatively Bedford in the whole Harpenden, I would say because the high street is in this side of the town and things like that, and Rohansa Park have the actual strategic positions that offer for the Highlanders and all other big events like car events and happening here will directly draw traffic. But in the other side of it, it's kind of like left alone and things like that. So I'm thinking if in the whole April, while there's term break and things like that, if we can draw traffic over there, but I'm not sure how is the picture of the event, like what just Richard said, I cannot visualize. But if this can draw some people go there and see the art and there's some music playing, and people may not appreciate the art, but then the vibe and things like that with the music in a nice sunny afternoon, I would say it's okay for the community, especially in that side of the town, because yeah. That's basically what I'm thinking.
Chair, just on that, just to clarify, we do have 2 large-scale events going on in Batford this year. You're quite right. Historically, there weren't about events. So this year we do have the Batford Springs Nature Day, which is a large-scale event over there, and we also have Batford Community Festival, which are approved as a result of changes to our events program.
What are the timing on those?
Yeah. What roughly when do they occur?
I'm just,
I'm not sure.
I'm trying to get some more longevity out of the art that would be funding, and maybe it can be used in the other 2 events as well.
Possibly, but I wouldn't want to commit to that without knowing what it looks like and what it is.
Yeah, that's
Specifically,
half the
that's
challenge,
right.
isn't it? But for me, it just feels it's like 2 weeks and then it's gone. But if we can keep it longer.
Just out of interest, again, coming back to this sort of scoring system and how you do it, how would you, on something like this, there are obviously other sources of funding. One of the most obvious would be the various community funds that both Thames Water and Affinity Water have. is very much focused on water and the story of water. Where does it fit that for something like that, for example, from a commercial organisation who has a real vested interest in funding something like this, that people have gone to there first rather than coming to us? Because after all, we're taxpayers, I think it's sort of down that tree from that. And it seems to me when you read this, you go, you know, if you're Affinity or Thames, they should, you know, they have, or both of those organisations will have community funds for funding these types of things. It's quite interesting as to whether they've applied to those and been turned down or not chosen to apply to them.
I mean, it's a bit tricky for Thames though, isn't it?
I think it's right up the street of the sort of things that they know.
Yeah, it is, but in terms of the efforts that it's put into the river,
Well, yeah,
it's a bit tricky.
they've got hundreds of thousands of pounds they spend on community funding things, so.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
People should be making use of that, I would say.
Yeah, they should, but it's a bit of a tricky one for Thames.
I'm not sure it is.
Not sure it is, surely.
I think it's.
They want to burnish their credentials a bit more and redeem themselves a bit more, given what they've been up to.
I mean, they spend,
It's an opportunity.
They spend a
to do
lot-
something new.
they spend lots of money on doing stuff for the River Lee and on trying to improve it, but. It's partly the question, as a wider question, which is when you come to looking at these things and something like this, where do you test somebody who's applying for something as to whether they've looked at other funding sources?
Comparatively with all others that we have discussed, like Lions, Highlanders, they are famous, well-known names. That is, I think they can get a lot of different funding from other sources. But XAP, I'm not sure how many of you have already well known about it. But I just based on the information that I got, they say that they set up like in 2007 to 2012, and then there's a majorly women artists want to promote the artworks for the community. So comparatively from what I heard, this is a very comparatively minority like charity group. And from the financial statement, although I agree with Kevin's points that I can't see how's the money in and out control, but I guess we are not here to like vet their bank statements. But from the budget, they are like really sort of cash. They are like doing it just for the benefits of the communities. So that's my point of view, thinking that we might have to consider whether it's having good impact to the community.
You're supportive of the application.
I am, because I can't see the economic direct benefits, but I think we should help those. If it's in favor of the community, that is the major assumption. Then I would tend to grant the fund to those smaller individuals, organizations. So maybe come out
The
with 10.
community grant application after all, not the economic financial.
Yeah. So that's my point of view. And because I'm not sure whether interest, because I'm coming from the East Ward, so I always think that, for example, there's more like for the citizen case that we just approved, there's always more cases in that side of the. So if there's a event for that side of the community, for people like have one more option to go out of the 8 events, no need to mention all those school visits that might go there. I can't, because I'm not an art person, so I can't say how much benefit, but I just feel that it's good to do. That's my personal.
I'd like to steer this to a vote, if I may. So any further comments or thoughts on the application itself?
Could we fund £1,000 rather than £1,517?
We could choose to do that if we so wish.
What the choices you're asking us to vote on?
Okay, so what, I'm going to make three propositions. And let's work out the structure so there's no confusion in the voting process. I guess option A is to approve this submission as made, £1,500. Option B would be to approve a reduced submission and taking Councillor Ivor's suggestion of say £1,000. And the third option would be just to decline the application completely. We can have more permutations, but just to keep it simple, I'm going to offer three options. And what I propose to do, I'm going to start from the top, and you can either vote or not vote for any one of the three options based on your own point of view. Is everyone okay with that process?
Yeah.
Okay, Councillor Chong.
So if councillors tend to vote for 1 and 2, but do they can only vote for 1 or 2, or they can vote for both in case they want to support, but they don't want to support the full amount?
So you can, okay, good question. So I think, and please, if my logic isn't sound, please challenge me on this because I don't want to lead you all down the wrong path. I will start from the top and I will, as soon as we hit a majority, then we stop. So if I say all those in favour of the application as submitted for 1,500, and I will, given there's a 7 here, I will actually try and refrain from voting. I'd like to let the councillors have their say. As soon as we hit 4 votes, then we're done. So if 4 people vote for the 1,500, I think that we're done.
Okay, my worry is that
So you can keep your hand up. You can keep your hand up for the second option.
Correct.
Yep. So okay.
Maybe I've made this too complicated.
No, just go for it.
After the explanation is fine. Just go for it.
Okay, so we're going to start from the top. And as soon as we hit 4 votes, we are done. So all those in favour of approving the application as submitted with £1,500 of a grant. 1 vote, so it's not passed. Option B, all those in favour of voting in support of a reduced grant of £1,000, raise your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4. So motion passed. Okay, thank you. So I think that we have one more item in this section, item 712. So, Darragh, would you start to introduce this before we hand the floor to Councillor Lyder?
Yes, Chair. So in terms of the motion, so in terms of procedure, so before any discussion or response, Councillor Lyder needs to propose the motion and it needs to be seconded by Councillor Timmins. At that point in time, Councillor Lyder has the opportunity to speak against the motion. After Councillor Lyder has done that, then I'm happy to give an officer response. And then we kind of go into slightly uncharted territory because it's the first motion we've had in my 10 years here. So it's down to discretion, Chair, in lots of ways, as to whether you hold it as a kind of discussion or whether you hold it strictly in standing orders, which is where one person's allowed to speak on the motion. So that's the procedure. The crucial thing is the motion sticks to the proposal within the motion because that's been accepted on that basis and a very strict requirements for motions to be accepted by me. So that's the first start. A proposal was second up. Go from there.
Okay, Councillor, do you understand that?
So I just propose the motion now.
Yeah, so if you propose and it's seconded, then it's formally moved and then it can be discussed.
Okay.
Sorry to interrupt. I'm going to have to disappear at some point. So if I just get up and leave, please don't take it. It's been really, I've got to pick my daughter up. So, sorry.
Okay, Councillor Lyder.
I propose the motion.
A second.
Brilliant, thank you.
That was straightforward.
So you've got the opportunity under standing orders to speak on it if you wish to at the start, or not.
Okay. Well, I'll speak on the motion as it is. Obviously, I'm not going to read it out because you can all read. I suppose the aim of this motion is to consider whether the Town Council's financial regulations were applied correctly with the Accessing the Town Centre survey, and to learn from that going forward to ensure oversight, openness and good governance. The main concern is the flawed estimate and how to ensure in the future that the council can have confidence in an estimate. I understand that the survey company was considered to be exempt from some of the regulations. And I would like officers to consider whether the exemption, as stated in the Town Council's financial regulations, is too broad. And I'm going to use the model financial regulations document from HAPTC, which is Hertfordshire Association Parish and Town Councils. And I've also looked at Berkhamsted Town Council's financial regulation. And I also think if you look at the legislation, I think the regulations are narrower than stated in the financial regulations for procurement. In terms of time pressure, whether that was an issue, I think the wording of the model financial regulations, again from HAPTC, is that time becomes an issue when it's an emergency, not when it's just a pressure of getting things done. But I think the main point is that where there's a disparity between an estimate and the cost, and that disparity is substantial, what are the limits of approval from the council or a committee? So when this was before the Town Council in September last year, the cost, the estimate was included in the decision. But we subsequently learned it's much more. I would say it's substantially more, but anyway, that's not the point. It's more, so therefore does the approval by the council or a committee still stand? So basic. And what is the process for the ratification of an increase? Because on the basis of what's happened here, there is no process. Because it came to council or committee, so it's got to be reassessed. Essentially, my mission.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Timmins, anything to add to the
Nothing
motion?
to add.
Okay, thank you. Town Clerk, you have a response in mind?
I do, yeah, and that introduction is useful. It was slightly wider than the motion, so I'll try to. What I don't want to be is kind of a stickler to say standing orders only allows us to deal with the motion itself. We'll try to be useful in the response. Do you want me to read out a response, Chair?
Yes, well, that's not
Is that the best way to do it? And then I've got hard copies as well.
And just for the record, I thank Councillor Ivor and Timmins for the motion itself. I think it's a valid and an important topic. Look forward to the response, but I also look forward to the comments and the questions from all of the councillors here tonight.
Yeah, thank you. So the motion, as agreed on the agenda, proposes that the committee approve the implementation and review of the Town Council's financial regs relating to Section 8. And officers, we really support that proposal. We think it's needed in light of what's been fairly unique circumstances, I would say, in relation to the research and the timings associated to it. So in terms of the officer response, actions were taken within our financial regulations, in particular 8.2A2, where officers considered the contract to relate to specialist service. These actions were taken in order to deliver the council's resolution that was made in September 2025. And this resolution was to commission a survey from a research company and report findings in January 2026. Now, the deadline of January 2026 was critical, as this was the month in which the district council had informed us that it would need to the any evidence in order to inform their review that they'd advised they were carrying out on the parking policies. Had the town council officers delayed taking any action or referred back to committee or council for further decisions before appointing a research company, it would have meant that the town council would not have received research finding in January, which in effect would have meant that council resolution wouldn't have been able to be delivered. So the knock-on effect is that the town council wouldn't have provided any evidence to the district council to help inform their review, which they had advised us was useful additional context. So that's kind of the context starting point to the response. And then there were 5 specific questions within there numbered that we've got a response to. So number 1, so officers believe the underestimate relates to the scale and the speed of the research that was required. So the short period of time for delivery that included work being required over a Christmas period is likely to have contributed to a higher quotes compared to if there was a longer period or time for delivery. So once the scope was defined and formal quotations were obtained, the costs provided by suppliers were higher than our early estimates. And those early estimates were based on kind of previous experience of similar-ish things, although this